We've done lots of videos here on the channel on how to defend the zig route, but what about the pivot route that breaks back over the middle? Simply put, there are two assignments in the game that I feel you need to have available in your defense. That way, if you suspect the route that breaks to the outside, you have an adjustment. If you suspect the route that breaks back to the inside, you also have an adjustment. And adjustments are the name of the game if you want to win more often in Madden. So make sure you're subscribed right here to the channel, as I've got all the videos breaking down the adjustments to make you better at the game absolutely free. Hit that notification bell, and if you don't mind, drop a comment below. Let's get into how to stop zigs and pivot return routes. Now, the undeniable most common offense that you're going to face right now in Madden in March or April, by the time you see this video, is the normal Y off close, and that is in the Philadelphia Eagles playbook. And there are a couple of different routes that you need to be aware of here. Obviously, we know quite prominently a lot of players are going to run the play known as cheat flat X post. Now, when it comes to this particular play, this is a very simple solve. The first zone that we're going to break down is the seam flat. Now, you can find a seam flat traditionally in a cover 3 match-based defense. You can also hot route this on the field. So I'm going to call cover 4 here just to illustrate making the adjustment on the fly, because that's where most of you guys are going to use it. Now, the seam flat assignment can be found on a couple of different positions in the game. The first one is going to be an edge rusher. This could be an outside linebacker in a stand-up, in a 1-4, or it could be a hand in the dirt defensive end in a 3-2. The seam flat assignment is actually quite good for the role of stopping whips and pivots both. In fact, if you really wanted to pair together a seam flat and a hard flat on the field together, this is actually a pretty decent combo. Now, of course, you still have to meet minimum rush requirements to get sheds, but as it pertains locking down the route, whether it's inside or outside, we'll start with a zig to the outside. I want you to watch here how Julius Peppers matches this and smothers it. I mean, I can't throw that. And in addition to that, you got a hard flat that would have picked it off as well. In fact, it did pick it off, and we take that back to the crib. But that's with an edge rusher. A lot of you guys aren't going to want to sacrifice an edge rusher, so let's just go ahead and put the seam flat on our slot corner. To do this, you're going to hit A or X if you're on PlayStation, left analog stick up. This activates the seam flat. And when your opponent snaps the ball, that route is going to be absolutely smothered. You'll get a pick or a knockout pretty easily. And of course, this adjustment does a good job on the return route, also known as the pivot route. This comes back over the middle. So if I were to go and take Peterson, put him into a seam flat, you're going to see that he's going to end up matching this. He's going to stay on it and basically try to run with it. So what you're going to see with this adjustment is that it's pretty good. In this example, Hester is a little bit shorter than Pat Pete. He's got a little bit better locomotion, so he actually does create a little bit of separation here. It's not enough that I would personally feel comfortable, especially if there's a KO on this particular route. Even though this is a matching principle for this seam flat, zone KO such as mid zone or flat zone KO will activate on this depending on what part of the field you're covering when the ball is thrown. So you're not really going to be able to throw this too easily. But let's just say for players that maybe play regs or maybe an ultimate team, you don't have a knockout and this throw is a little too open for you, your opponent's catching it for 4 to 5 yards. Not the end of the world, but obviously in a short down situation, you need something a little bit more smothering. That is where our next adjustment is going to come into play. But before we break down what adjustment that is, make sure, once again, you're subscribed here to the channel, and also make sure you check out my strategy website, gridirongameplans.gg. There is no better time than now to take a look at the website and see everything that I put out from the start of the year all the way back in our August vault tips to now as we approach April. For $9.95 a month, you unlock everything on the website. That is a weekly updated vault update where we're focused on the metas, what the pros are doing, how it works, how to counter it. Yes, even into April, we are still updating our website. You also unlock all offensive and defensive game plans, members only Discord access, and 1-hour lab sessions inside of our Discord every single week at no additional charge. Yes, even into April, we are still doing our lab sessions. Make sure you guys go check it out. You guys can get it for $9.95 a month or bundle both games, college football and Madden, for $14.95 a month. Otherwise, let's get back into the video. So let's say that pivot route that we just showed was maybe a little bit too open for you. Maybe it's 4th down and short. Your opponent's throwing this for the game. You need something a little bit more reliable. Well, this is where the vertical hook comes into play. A vertical hook can be found in a cover 2 base defense, but again, you can hot route these on the field as well. So I'm going to just base out of a cover 4. Once again, vertical hooks can be something that you put on a defensive end, but we're not going to go ahead and do that here. We're actually going to go to our slot corner and put them into a vertical hook. Now, the downside to a vertical hook here, let's talk about what could happen with a vert hook. If you know for certain that your opponent is about to throw a return pivot route over the middle, there is really, truly no better assignment than the vertical hook, especially if you shade it down. The reason for this is it just basically stays in the seam and it's going to be all over the back of that player. So you can set up your ram blitz, and by the time they go to throw this, there's just no world where this is ever going to be open. Okay, so with this, I love to tie this particular zone adjustment to a pressure because, again, your opponent is not going to be able to handle that. So a lot of players will actually come out in a cover 4 base defense, run a vertical hook, and they'll shade down. A lot of them will definitely shade down with this. The downside to this is that it does leave the zig open. So you do have a responsibility as a player when you play within this defense to keep an eye on the zig. If you see the zig, you must switch stick and get over there. That can be a challenge for a lot of players. This is why, in my opinion, the seam flat is far and away the best assignment. If you're not sure which way the zig or the pivot is going, you know it's a double move, run the seam flat. Because at the end of the day, what you can do is run a seam flat and then bracket it with a linebacker into a hard flat. That way, if it breaks over the middle, you've got something that is reliable, close enough. If it breaks to the outside, you got something that brackets it as well. So again here, we'll run this route that breaks over the middle. You're gonna see it's really not the end of the world. So again, look at how that guards it. And in fact, all that extra traffic, it really kind of struggled to get home at all. So again, you can bracket it with a hard flat and a seam flat with both your corners. You don't even have to involve the linebacker, believe it or not. So let's say here I wanted to maybe run a seam flat to the left slot, a hard flat to the outside corner, just in case that whip somehow steps on the toes of the seam flat and wins the outside. You would just modify your coverage. You can play a deep half over the top. You can play an outside third, modify your coverage overall. I would even come down here and present the threat of the ram blitz or a crossfire loop, make them have to block. And then from there, you're going to be really in a good spot. You know, even if they block it, you know, it's still like between your user and the seam flat, even if it wins back over the middle, you've got a user present that can help out. So, you know, the seam flat's good. It does get beat a little bit by the pivot back over the middle. That's where the vertical hook comes into play. But the seam flat's going to smother the zigs to the outside. And, you know, if you utilize both these zones effectively, your opponent's not going to be able to throw the most prominent check down route in all of Madden 25. But I'm going to get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you guys give it a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys later this afternoon with another short, or tomorrow with our next long form video upload. Until then, this is Zan, Lab, and good luck.